Committee meetings. We're going to kick off today with the Administrative Committee, first up. And I think we have Mr. Treasury Young, Chief Procurement Officer, giving us a procurement update. Mr. Young, you have the floor.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Commissioner, it's an honor to be here today to share. Yes, sir. Is that better? All right. Okay. So start over. So, Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Commissioner, it's an honor to be here today representing the Office of Procurement and to share with you all the good things that we've been doing. So, get to the right slide. So, my name is Treasury Young. That's just like the Treasury Department, but without the money. So it's my job to help spend the money, not to make it. But again, I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the department. It is an honor for me to be here and an honor for me to represent our profession and all of the various professionals throughout the department that work on it. So as I get started, the thing to remember about procurement is it is a partnership. So our end users are the ones that have the needs. And so their job is to identify the needs as they go about their business day to day. And then our role in that is to meet our partners, our end users, our customers, our internal customers where they are. And our job is to build procurement processes that are compliant with state and federal rules and regulations that allow us and allow them to achieve their needs. Of course, the third part of that partnership are our external partners, our vendors, suppliers, consultants, and contractors, whose job it is to bid on those opportunities and to provide solutions to those needs. And so the thing to remember is without any one of these, our job doesn't work. But our job is not just to provide administrative processes. We see our job as being able to provide extra value. And we like to say that our knowledge is an inch deep and a mile wide because we know something about everything, but everything about nothing. But our job is to challenge our end users to reach for the stars, as you see the graphic, to think about what is possible as we all try to achieve our goals and to meet the needs of the department. And so as an administrative office, what we recognize is that we exist to serve the needs of our end users and our customers, not the other way around. If it weren't for our end users, if it weren't for their needs, then we recognize there would be no need for us. So what we kind of try to promote in our office and what everybody that's in our profession in the department recognizes is that we are solutions-based. We're always looking for the solutions while being focused on the needs of our customers. And so that's something that we eat, live, and sleep every day, just that approach and that focus. So let's talk about procurement versus purchasing, because those are two phrases that are often used synonymously. And so procurement is basically the processes that we go through where we prepare an advertisement, we work with our end users and prepare that, get it ready to go, advertise it on the street, conduct an evaluation, identify the awarded firm, go through signing a contract with them, and then we execute that contract and it's in place for our usage. But the act of purchasing is when we're actually buying things off of those contracts. So a little bit of a difference between the procurement process and the purchasing process, but a lot of people think they're the same thing. And so some phrases and some tools that we use, you've probably heard many of these things just in your comings and goings in the department, but I'm going to hit each of these briefly. So the first one is a request for information, or an RFI. And the thing to remember about an RFI is that's something that doesn't result in an award. We kind of refer to this as like market research, where we would meet with an end user, they identify a need that they don't really have solutions to, and we put out a statement basically to the world, to the vendor community, that says, here's our challenge, here's what our needs are, what ideas do you have to help us meet them? And then they respond with that, and then we can use that information to then craft that into a solicitation or to find other ideas for our end users. So it's a form of market research. The second one is a request for qualified contractors, and this one doesn't result in an award of itself, but is usually paired with a secondary phase, which is typically a low bid process, which we'll talk about in a second when I talk about the request for quote. But we typically use the request for qualified contractors when we don't have existing pre-qualified firms, or when our end users have identified a need to have a higher level of scrutiny and a higher level of requirements on any individual service. And so what that process usually results in is a pool of contractors that we then issue a secondary or a phase 2 bid to. And that usually is in the form of the next item of a request for quote, a request for quotations, or an RFQ. And that is simply an advertisement that we put out that when that vendors respond with their bid, and that it is a low bid, and we're making the award decision based on that low bid. Now, you've also probably heard the term invitation to bid, or ITB. It really is the same process as the RFQ. However, we designate it as an ITB because it is specific to our routine maintenance ITB services that our districts conduct. And we'll get to some of those numbers in a little while. But it basically is still the same thing where we're making the award based on a low bid. The next one is an RFP, or request for proposal. That is a tool that we use, also referred to as a best value, where we are looking at both a technical and a qualifications and a technical approach, and combining that with a cost. Now, sometimes that may be a 70%, 30% split between the technical and the cost, and there's a wide variations of ways that can be calculated based on our individual customers' needs. Last but not least is a request for qualifications. This one is specific and unique to our engineering and design services, where we intentionally do not consider price in the award decision. And that is mandated by both state and federal law, highest level at the Federal Brooks Act, that mandates qualification-based selection for all engineering and design services. So those are the tools that we generally use. And from there, our office consists of 4 unique groups: our operational procurement group, our engineering and design procurement group, our special projects procurement group, and then our quality assurance and compliance group. So I'll detail each one of those for you. So our operational procurement group itself consists of 4 different groups. It has the contracts group that sets up new contracts, the acquisitions group that buys things off of those available contracts, our card programs group, which manages the fuel card and the P card programs, and then our district operations. So the thing to remember about everything that the operational procurement does is it's all driven by the state's competitive bid threshold of $25,000. So any procurement, any single category of goods or services that we buy department-wide in a year, we have to competitively procure it if that exceeds $25,000. So that's a good segue into talking about our contracts group, because the contracts group is the group that sets up those available contracts. But as you might expect, there are administrative processes that we go through, and we've outlined that into 7 stages of that solicitation process to set up new contracts. So it starts again with our end users identifying their needs, and from that they have discussions with us in those pre-solicitation activities where they will meet with us and we will talk about the right ways to procure, any unique ideas that we have, and it really serves as a brainstorming session when we are meeting with them in this pre-solicitation stage. From there, once we've made all those decisions, we'll assist them in preparing the solicitation, getting all the documents ready to post, and when that's ready to go, we post that on the Georgia Procurement Registry as required by state law, where it's available for anybody and everybody to see. That advertisement will usually run anywhere from 15 to 30 days, and then once that closes, we'll then enter into the evaluation stage. And that evaluation stage, again, we are the process people. And so we are shepherding that evaluation process, but our staff are not the decision makers on that. We're making sure that the end users understand what their roles are and that they are abiding by the rules that we set forth in that solicitation document. And so again, we're the shepherders of that evaluation process, but not the actual decision makers. And so once the evaluation is completed, then we enter into the award process, which includes reviewing contract terms and conditions, talking to them about their price. Sometimes we can negotiate on price in certain instances, but ultimately that ends in an award process where we are signing and executing a contract. And then once that contract is signed, the contract is then turned over to our end users, whose job it is then to manage that contract during that contract process. And so that really is the longest time of this entire process, is that contract process, because most of our contracts can last for a term of up to 5 years. And so for every one of the procurements they go through, this is what that contracts group does. This slide gives you an idea of the kinds of things that this group procures as contracts. So on the left you have commodities, and on the right you have services, and I won't read every one of them to you, but it's things in the commodities, it's roadway maintenance kind of materials, asphalt and concrete, guardrail parts, all the way to administrative needs such as facilities and office supplies and furniture, all the way down to one of my favorites is sodium chloride. And so a unique thing about sodium chloride, which we all typically know as salt, the unique thing about that is we don't have any salt mines in the state of Georgia. Most of the salt mines in the country are up north. And so in the middle of the winter, most of the salt is going to places up north. So our salt supplier right now is a little company called Morton. Yes, that'd be the same company that makes your table salt. And most of the salt that we get from them these days doesn't come from the United States at all. It actually comes from a little country in South America called Chile, from the largest salt mine in the world, where they load it onto a boat and float it up through the Panama Canal, and typically through to the port in either Brunswick or Charleston, where we then truck it from those ports to our individual barns. So Commissioner can confirm this. About this time of year is when we tell all of our district folks, now is the time to buy salt and stock those barns as full as you can, because when the snow starts falling, it's awful hard to get it here quickly. And so our team, district-wide, as well as our procurement teams, do a fantastic job at doing that. So salt is I kid you, it's not my favorite. It's kind of the bane of my existence in the wintertime. It is definitely a challenge. But from there, they procure commodities, but they also procure services. One of everybody's favorites, the CHAMP contract, and then a host of other things related to roadway maintenance, from guardrail repair, mowing, landscaping, custodials at our welcome centers and rest areas, all kinds of training, financial audits in the engineering and design world. So a wide variety of things that this group procures. This slide will give you an idea of the volume of the things that they do. The graphic on the left talks about the number of contracts that group has by year. And the interesting thing about this slide is you'll notice that it would appear that the workload is going down because we have fewer contracts. In actuality, that's not the case. The reason that number is going down is because we're trying to be smarter in how we procure services. So an example is, in the past, for road ice and snow response equipment, we'd have had a separate contract for snow plows, another contract for snow plow blades, another contract for the hoppers that go in the back of the trucks to spread the salt. And each one of those contracts would have had multiple awards. And so what we've done is we've combined all of those into one contract, yes, with multiple awards, but effectively what we've done is we've reduced our number of contracts by a third, and overall that reduces our administrative burden while still allowing us to meet all the needs and have all the same vendors under contract, just being smarter in doing it. So that's why you see those numbers kind of trending down. The slide to the right of that is a reference to our Maintenance Master Services Agreements, which was a program that didn't exist prior to FY16 and only existed because of the passage of the Transportation Funding Act of 2015. And so what happens with this is each one of those firms that want to bid in the routine maintenance world, they respond to a pre-qualification posting that's on our webpage, and they respond with there's a committee that exists of our end users, consists of maintenance staff, and they review each one of those applications in detail. They review that, and they're reviewing that in accordance with a manual that is published online that talks about all the requirements they need in order to be pre-qualified. So it's a consistent and a steady measurement that these firms are being measured by when we're pre-qualifying them. And so from that, every firm that's deemed pre-qualified gets a Maintenance Master Service Agreement executed. And you can see we're all the way up last year of 627. And the only reason it's going down for FY22 is, one, because we're not through the year yet. And two, because some of those initial ones, we're at the 5-year cycle of those. So some of those initial ones are beginning to expire, and a lot of those firms are in the process of renewing their pre-qualification. So we'll come back to some more information about the ITB program in a minute. But I wanted to show you this slide, which shows you this contracts group, the volume of the work that they have done by fiscal year for the last 4 years. And so the blue graph shows the number of solicitations they've done. So you can see there's been a steady increase. And from there, the orange slide shows you the number of contracts that has resulted from that. So you can see there's multiple contracts being awarded on each of those solicitations. And then the gray bar, which is the smallest, which I'm proud of, is that shows you the average time that it's taking us to go through all 7 of those stages, or actually the first 6 until we get an executed contract. So when you consider their overall workload, those are remarkable numbers that group is achieving. So that was the procurement side of things, where we do go through the advertisement and set up the contract. This group that we're looking at talk about now is our acquisition section, which is where the actual purchasing happens. And so every purchase that occurs goes through this cycle, where it starts with a requisition, which is through an application called PeopleSoft. It's our financial system. It has 2 different levels of approval before it comes to us. And then once that comes to us, it's assigned to our staff. They then identify the right place to buy it from. I'll talk about that on the next slide. They issue a purchase order. From that purchase order, then the goods or services are received and invoices supplied. And then once that process is complete, we then measure and see what our production metrics are and how long that took us to do. So every one of those purchases goes through this decision process. This is a graph that's published by the Department of Administrative Services State Purchasing Division, but it starts at the top with Tier 1, which are mandatory statewide contracts that are required for all state agencies to use. From there, we go to Tier 2, and Tier 2 is any existing state entity contracts, or basically any contracts that we have established for our own usage. And so from there, if we don't have any of those, we go to Tier 3. Now, Tier 3 is an interesting one because those are statutory sources, where we're required to buy certain items for Georgia Enterprises for Products and Services or from Georgia Correctional Industries. Some things are identified as mandatory, and some things are preferred. So at this level, we're talking about the things that would be mandatory. If we can't meet the need there, then we go to Tier 4, which are our convenient statewide contracts, any preferred products from Georgia Enterprise for Products and Services, any other agencies we can piggyback potentially off any contracts that they have if they meet our needs. Typically, we have more entities piggybacking off of ours than us off of theirs. And then if there's any cooperative purchases from other states, and last but not least, an open market purchase, which would be the result of a competitive bid. And so every one of those purchases, and every one you're going to see in these numbers in just a second, goes through this decision matrix every time. Now, our team does that a whole lot faster than I could even explain it to you just then, because their average time for doing that is less than a day. And over the course of the last couple of years, our average time is actually less than half a day. And so you can see from this graph all the way from FY12 to FY22, and again, you do see that big difference in the increase when the TFA of 2015 was passed. These represent the number of purchase orders by fiscal year. And so in addition to that, and by the way, this includes the work that's done out of our office at the general office, our 7 districts, and our 2 outlying offices, being materials testing and traffic operations. So this is kind of numbers that represent the entire work of the entire department. This slide shows you the dollar amounts associated with each of those POs that are issued. And again, you can see the impact of the TFA of 2015. And it's stayed relatively stable. It's gone up and down the actual dollar amounts. But still, it's incredibly impressive when you know what goes into each one of these purchases. Transitioning from our acquisitions group into talking about our card programs, reminder that card programs group oversees 2 programs. 1, our purchasing card program, and 2, our fuel card program. And so our purchasing card program, we have a lot of protections built in to that program. First and foremost, any point of sale transactions where you have a user that's swiping a card at a vendor, at a cash register somewhere, any point of sale transaction must be urgent, unplanned, or non-routine. And each user, when they swipe that, they have to come back in their reconciliation process, and they have to identify which one of those it was and why it was. And so those transactions are limited to a single transaction limit of less than $1,000. And again, they have to be unplanned, non-routine, or urgent. From there, the next group are those that come through our requisition process through PeopleSoft, and it has 2 different levels of approval. So this is only used by our procurement team in our office and in our districts and outlying offices, and that can be up greater than $1,000, up to $5,000 single transaction limit. And so those purchases don't have to be urgent, unplanned, or non-routine, but they do have to be justified by 2 different levels of supervisory approval, and it's less than $5,000. And so the thing to remember about every one of those transactions is every one of them is reviewed by our team for compliance with that urgent, unplanned, and non-routine, and the rationale as to why. and that we're purchasing them from the right place. So it's a very well-managed program, and something I think the department can be very proud of. So from there, our Right Express fuel card program, that is the program which has cards assigned to vehicles and pieces of equipment, and simply allows those users to be able to get gas and low-level routine maintenance type services on those cars typically. So from there, our last group in the operational procurement section is our district operations group. And so the district offices and the outline offices don't report to the Office of Procurement directly, but rather they report to us by dotted line for policy, processes, and procedures. And because of that, we recognize that we needed a strong connection to those districts and those offices to be able to hear their needs and to meet their needs. And so we have a position that's a liaison between our office and between the districts and those outlying offices that allows us to maintain consistency in those policy processes and procedures. But one of the places that we've realized real benefits is in emergency operations. This person is a backup and support to the districts during hurricane and snow and ice responses typically. He helps to coordinate all the hotel accommodations. And by the way, the last winter storm that we had in January, this individual and his team in the districts procured 342 hotel rooms in just a little over a day. So when you're trying to coordinate that many assets, and you're also trying to compete sometimes against the utility companies and others trying to get to the same places, that's a remarkable achievement for that group. And so there's even been a time in an emergency event where we actually had a need to send that individual down to live in that district for about 2 weeks, so he could be there on boots on the ground, so to speak. And the last thing that person does, certainly not the least, is be the administrator of our routine maintenance ITB process. And so here's kind of what that looks like. Since the inception of that ITB program of 2016, we have issued and awarded a total of 1,525 solicitations, totaling almost $786 million. And so the amazing thing to me about this is this is a program that didn't even exist prior to FY16, and we stood it up through support of our leadership and our efforts in a short period of time. The graph indicates to you the amount of time it has taken us to process each one of those routine maintenance ITBs from beginning to end, again, from the time we got the request until the time a notice to proceed was issued. And you'll see it's continuing to trend down. Now, the interesting thing to know about this is of that timeline, 15 days is what those bids are on the street. And there's an additional 10 days for the contractors to get us back administrative information. So from these numbers, you can take 25 days off the top or off the bottom, and that represents the true processing time within our office. So really, we're down to about 2 weeks to prepare the solicitation, get it posted, conduct the evaluation, identify the winner, get contracts signed. And so that's probably one of our most efficient processes that we have in the department today, and something that we're very proud of. Last but not least, last slide for this operational procurement group. This group has been recognized. Commissioner has shared some of these accolades. This group has been recognized by the National Procurement Institute for 3 out of the last 4 years for excellence in procurement. I believe the only state-level DOT that can say that. In addition to that, back in 2018, before our routine maintenance ITB program, we actually competed against the state purchasing level entities of all 50 states for that, putting up that program, and we got an honorable mention for that. So we think we should have won, but still to be recognized going up against the state purchasing level folks in each state is a remarkable achievement. So represents a total of 38 professionals across the state in our office and in the districts and outlying offices. So a very hardworking group, and a group that I am very proud of and that contributes a lot to the department. From there, moving into our engineering and design procurement team, and that consists of 2 groups. One group that handles the pre-qualification and another group that handles the procurement and actual negotiations of contracts. Just like the routine maintenance invitation to bid world, the engineering design procurement world has pre-qualification as well. And so you see the picture of the pre-qualification manual that is posted online. We pre-qualify firms in 79 unique areas or area classes. For each one of those area classes in the manual, there's the minimum requirements for the firms to be qualified. It talks about licensure, training requirements, and is available online, so everybody sees that. Now, just like in the operational procurement world, the folks doing the evaluation and the assessment of that is our end users. So they're the ones that identify the needs for the area classes. They're the ones that identify what the requirements are to meet each of those area classes, and they're the ones that actually conduct the evaluation to determine if firms are actually meet those requirements or not. And so currently we have 404 firms that are pre-qualified across all of those 79 area classes. So this is just a sample of what those area classes are. There's 7 high-level groupings that we pre-qualify firms in, from road design, structural design, CEI, erosion sedimentation control, soils, foundations, materials testing, planning, and topography. And so all of those 79 area classes fall under each one of those broad categories. So a wide variety of things that we do. And so just like in the operational procurement world, you know, we love processes. So we've broken that down into 7 stages as well. The first being pre-qualification, and then where we meet with our end users who come to us with their needs, and we develop a solicitation that's, number 1, compliant with state and federal laws, and number 2, that meets their needs. And so from there, once we get that developed, we then issue the advertisement again on the Georgia Procurement Registry. It's typically on the street for 30 days. Once we receive all those responses in, we conduct the evaluation. Again, we are shepherding the process of the evaluation, but our end users, our subject matter experts, are the ones that are actually conducting that and issuing their opinions on the scores and the comments that back each of those scores up. Once we identify the winner, we're then negotiating the contracts or task orders. Most of our contracts are set up so that we execute a master contract, and then the actual work is issued through sub-agreements that we call task orders. So from there, we negotiate at least the first one on that, and then we award that, sign the contract, and then that contract administration process begins by our end users where they are managing the work. So this slide gives you an idea for the volume that group has done over the last 5 years. And so you can see from 20 solicitations in FY18 to 26. Now, each one of those does result in multiple contract awards, but you can see from there the number of times, the amount of months it is taking them to process those, all the way from 4.9 up to 6.5. And that's influenced a lot by our solicitations. As they have more contracts that result from them, they tend to take us a little longer because you've got more evaluators that you're having to wrangle their schedules and get everybody together on time. So these are some of the most impressive slides that I get the opportunity to talk about. This shows you those engineering design related contracts. And this is some of the numbers that the commissioner speaks to you about in the board meeting on Thursday every month. This also represents a lot of information that you are sent by the board secretary right before the board meeting each month, where you see all the contracts that are executed, task orders executed against previously executed contracts and new contracts, and then low bid awards for our Office of Right-of-Way and Materials and Testing. And so what you see, again, a huge impact by the passage of the TFA of 2015. And with one exception, we've set new records every year for the last 7 years. We'll see if we make it this year. The number's 1,069 through the end of May of this year. So we'll see if we beat last year. But in addition to that, showing the number of those contracts, this slide shows you the dollar amounts that's associated with all of those contracts. And so you can absolutely see the impact of the TFA of 2015 and how that enabled us to further building and maintaining the roads. From there, so that's the engineering and design group. From there, we'll talk about the special projects procurement group, which is our newest group. It's actually only been in existence for about 3 months now. So because of that growth that you saw with the engineering and design procurement group, we recognized that there were some services that were not engineering and design, but also didn't really fit in the operational procurement world. And so we felt it necessary to carve this group out so they could focus on those unique and special things. And this includes things like supporting the Office of Right-of-Way, not in buying parcels, but in supporting them in acquiring the services needed to help them buy the parcels, such as appraisals and all kinds of property management and relocation reviews. This group also is involved in buying the stream and wetland mitigation credits for the environmental office, for supporting our Office of Traffic Operations and a variety of services, supporting our Office of Materials and Testing and geotechnical services, Office of Planning, as well as even the State Maintenance Office in debris disposal. So again, that's our newest group. We'll certainly have more to come on that later as they continue to flesh out. And last but not least, our Quality Assurance and Compliance group. And I often, when we're conducting training, one of the things that I often ask folks is I say, what do you think is the most important thing that procurement does? And inevitably, the answer always comes back, that it's, well, buying things that you need and when you need it. And I say, well, yeah, of course, that's true. But I always add that the most important thing that procurement does is build and maintain the public trust. And we do that by following the rules, following the state rules, the federal rules, and by being open, fair, transparent, promoting competition everywhere, looking for ways to include, not to exclude. And by doing all those things, the folks who have entrusted us with resources can be confident that we're being good stewards of that. And so I think that's one of the most important things that procurement does is build and maintain the public trust. Now, one caveat. In our engineering design procurement world, we average about in the mid-30s in the number of responses that we get. And so there can only be wordy. And so building and maintaining the public trust means that we do the things that we say we're going to do. We do the things that the state rules and the federal rules say we're going to do. And we do those things consistently, and so folks know what to expect as they're bidding. So our compliance group, the compliance cycle really consists of three processes. One, and we think that one of the biggest hurdles to compliance is not because people don't want to do the right thing, but because they may not be aware of what the right things are. And so our compliance group, one of their main focuses is in training. And so they're constantly training procurement staff. We train non-procurement staff. We even train local governments. I'll show you those numbers in a second. And so after they train, we go into the monitoring and reviewing cycle where they're reviewing transactions and identifying areas and opportunities for improvement. And when they identify those areas and opportunities for improvement, they go back and look at the training and then readjust that on a regular basis to address those areas where we have opportunities for improvement. So I call that the compliance cycle. And so we offer a variety of classes. Again, this program has been in existence since 2015. Again, we train local governments in how to do engineering and design procurements where they want to receive federal money to use in the preliminary engineering phase. We train non-procurement GDOT personnel in basics of procurement, ethics in procurement, P-card policies, how to administer contracts, how to conduct evaluations in engineering and design. And then we also, of course, we train procurement staff. We train them in the fundamentals and the basics of procurement and all of the administrative processes to make sure that everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do. We even conduct an annual conference every fall where we get all those procurement people together in one place and go and conduct a huge training event and talk about all the things and the needs and how they can better serve their customers in the districts. And so since the inception of the program in 2015, we've taught a total of 263 classes for over 5,200 students, 16 to 535 students for local governments, 172 classes, over 3,900 for non-procurement personnel, 75 classes, and 780 unique students for procurement personnel. So the thing to remember and know is all of our procurement staff are state certified through the State Department of Administrative Services, and we even have 5 that are nationally certified by the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing. So those are all high honors and something that we are definitely proud of. And so that concludes all 4 groups, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner?
Treasury's worried I have a question. I don't. I just want to, again, compliment Treasury for representing his procurement team, and he used the word a couple of times of procurement professionals. I think he's demonstrated why that is to have, as he showed, to build and maintain the public trust. It's a very important process, and they have thorough processes to ensure that public trust and transparency is maintained. So I just want to commend him and his team of truly professionals, which has, as you can see, demonstrated the increase in volume since 2015, but even going back to prior to that, having great processes in place such that this department is held in high honors in as it should be for the job that his team does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Any other questions? Administrative Committee stands adjourned.
Being at 2:05, I now call this Program Delivery Committee to order. We are going to have a bridge update from our state bridge engineer, Don Digamon. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Sir, you got it right the first time.
Okay,
Not a lot of people do that, so.
Well, please proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody, Chairman, Committee, and Commissioner. I appreciate your time here to listen about bridges. But for those of you who have not met before, I am Don Digman, your state bridge engineer. Previously, you saw and heard a presentation by Andrew Heath, the Deputy Chief Engineer, that outlined an overview of the bridge program. Today, I'm here to provide you a closer look at. Is that better? Today, I'm here to provide you a closer look at those programs that help deliver replacement and also maintain those bridges. And also to discuss about how we're allocating those funds from the new BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, that's going to help, again, do those replacements for those existing bridges. Shown here is just an overview of what I'm going to be talking about, the current status of Georgia bridges, bridge maintenance, bridge replacements, and bridge program. Here's just a snapshot of the Georgia bridge inventory and the growth that's been happening over the 5 years. Not only are we replacing bridges, we are also adding in new bridges that were never there before. An example of that is the Northwest Corridor system. And then in the future, the MMIP system. Those will certainly add to those bridge inventory. Here's another snapshot of the Georgia bridges. Here you're seeing a state versus not state-owned. Focus there on the one closed bridge. That is just a transition. That bridge has actually been replaced. We're just converting that into from the old number to the new number. And also a focus on the not state-owned or local bridges. Numbers there. You see there's a lot of posted bridges in that category and also closed. And that we'll talk to about the bridge replacement programs to focus on that on the local bridges. Here's just showing the ages of our bridges in our inventory system. And you can see there's a lot of them that are in that greater than 50 or years older. And that's always going to be transitioning as we're putting in new bridges. Other bridges are getting older, and age is one of the two major factors that drives the replacement and bridges deteriorating. Here, just a look at what used to be designed for the bridges in the early times. And then, as you can see, these bridges are getting bigger. So the actual trucks are getting bigger, and the design trucks are having to consider that and catch up, and we're designing for these heavier loads as well. And with those heavier loads in age, there are times where we're going to have to post bridges to make sure that we keep them in safe working order for the traveling public and making sure we have mobility. Here's just a snapshot of what the bridge office is comprised of. As you can see, the diagram is overlapping. A lot of our work and our staff do a lot of these things. Hopefully that's not a bridge being closed. So, and there's a focus here on inspection and maintenance as far as programming, and I'll show that in the next couple slides. Bridge maintenance, they do a lot of inspections, both for the state and local owned bridges. Inspections are done every 2 years. And the bridges that we look at are the criteria is the hydraulic opening is 20 feet or greater. So anything less than that, the county would have to look at that. Here's just an example of what the inspectors see and report to us, and then eventually repair. This is in District 7, and is a quick turnaround for this cap repair. It is just a repair. It's temporary. We are looking at replacing this cap in the near future. And then at some point, you either just have to update the design due to deterioration or just an outdated design that you have. Here is what we call the Low Impact Bridge Program project. Took that bridge on the left there with timber decking and provided a asphalted box beam bridge that we have here on the right. Here I'm just showing the investment that the department has placed into replacement of bridges. See there, $424 million per year. A lot of that has to do with what we're given as a bridge office, the bridge set-asides, and also the newly provided funds from the BIL, and also when they're available, bridge bonds, or I was told they're actually road and bridge bonds. So sometimes it's given the road projects and sometimes the bridge projects. Here's just a table of all the divisions, the way I call them, in our bridge replacement program. You got the bridge lump sum maintenance, the bridge set-aside, the low impact bridge program, the local bridge replacement program, and the state-funded bridge program. And I'll go through and describe in detail in the next couple slides what each entail and what they focus, what each program focuses on. Here in maintenance, we're doing preservation, rehabilitation, and repairs. We have a budget of $45 million, $30 million for interstates, and $15 million for state routes. We help develop plans for those repairs, get them bid, and get the repairs done. As of FY22 to date, we've got 11 projects that were bid. Here is a 22 snapshot of the bridge replacement program. As of now, we've got 372 projects, active projects, that either are in PE engineering, right-of-way, and construction. So there's a lot of work, and it's a nod to what Treasury was talking about, procurement for those services. The bridge office alone, we've got 54 engineers, and that's a lot for 54 engineers to do. So we partner up with the consultants to get all that work done. And a lot of that, as far as replacements, we're looking at poor conditions, weighted structures, critical features, structure types, temporary shored. We look at priority routes, freight routes, and then as we get those into replacements, we look at whether it's a replacement or rehab through life cycle costs, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And I'll also explain about the selection of bridges using a data-driven approach. So the LIBP, or Low Impact Bridge Program, this is one of our best programs as far as targeting our local bridges. We've got 108 bridges programmed since 2015 and 50 already open since then. It's a streamlined design and environmental and construction delivery. Typically, you will go about 3 years from start to finish when you open up that bridge. So it's been a great way to help those locals get those posted bridges replaced and get their mobility for their citizens. There is no cost to the locals, requires an off-site detour, and we've got $21 million in that program. And here's an example, County Road 152 over Itchaway-Notchaway Creek in Randolph County. On the left was the existing bridge, and on the right is the new bridge, and I believe it's already open. Here's the second program, what we call the Local Bridge Program, that focuses, again, on local bridges. From FY18 to 24, we program 132 bridges. In this program, we solicit support from the locals in the form of right-of-way participation. And in this case, there's 3 tiers. Tier 1 is 50,000, Tier 2, 75, and Tier 3 is 100,000. And the tiers are dependent on the complexity of that site and the project delivery of that bridge. And then next is the state-funded bridge program. We have 70 bridges programmed to date with just over 35 open since 2016. It requires a JIPA document. That gives us some schedule efficiencies. We can borrow from the Low Impact Bridge Program for further efficiencies to get these bridges out and replaced quicker. And then the bipartisan infrastructure law, the BIL, particularly the bridge formula funding. Georgia's allotted $45 million per year for FY '22 and '25. We have already obligated 10 projects as of FY '22, and that's shown in the map. And one, it's federal funds with state match, but there is a caveat. If the bridge is a local road or rural minor collector classification, functional classification, it is obligated to receive 100% federal funds. So that's one of the things. If we can find those bridges, we can take our state dollar somewhere and replace some other bridges. And for the bond money, a lot of these are state routes, funds for right-of-way construction, excuse me, 12 bridges that were affected or placed funds to, and a lot of these are, these bond funds, as stated before, are only available when they're funds are appropriated when they're available. And here, examples of the bond funds in action, State Route 112 over Sap Creek in Grady County, and then State Route 92 over Proctor Creek or Lake Ackworth in Cobb County. And last, this just shows the work that a lot of the men and women in the bridge office, both design and maintenance, the inspectors and designers, are putting forth to drive down that functionally obsolete number for Georgia bridges. Now, it's not static. It's always going to be backwards and forwards with new bridges and as bridges get older. But it's with these programs, it keeps us a little bit ahead of the curve, trying to make sure that our Georgia bridges stay in that state of good repair. So with that, I appreciate your time. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I think on slide 61, you talk about a collector, the local road or rural minor collector. Define that.
Ooh, that's for a bridge person, that's going to be a little rough for me. But
I mean, can that be a tiny bridge?
yes, ma'am, it could be.
Okay, I'm just trying to picture in my mind what that would be. I'm so sorry, that's a hard question.
No, these are technical terms based on federal highway designation of road by characteristic. So the question's fair. Think of it as your most local road, which previously was not federally eligible. So under the bipartisan infrastructure law, it opened the door to use federal dollars where federal dollars were not allowed to be used before. So that's a good thing. And again, when you find, and Don mentioned, when you find the ones that sort of meet this threshold, it is eligible for 100% federal dollars, which saves state dollars that we were previously deploying, which means we can go do more state bridges with our state dollars. So, but just think about local road would be just a rural road, and you know, the most minor county road you can think of would fit that bill.
Okay.
We are actively looking for those. So, like the commissioner says, we can take those state dollars and replace other bridges.
I will start looking for those too.
Any other?
I think I do.
Any other questions from committee members or board members? I have, I think, two really quick questions. One, on posted bridges. Are they posted just to convey information of what the bridge will allow, or is there any level of enforcement associated with a posted bridge?
It's more information. I think enforcement can be everywhere, especially on these local roads.
Yeah.
We're just hoping the drivers obey those. Yeah.
My second question, on local bridges, is there any sort of shared liability between the local roads and GDOT? Is there any sort of, let me rephrase that, shared liability on local bridges between the local government and GDOT?
To my knowledge, that's all local as far as liability. We do help them a lot of times when we say, hey, we're going to have to close down this bridge, and we help them say, these are possible repairs you can do to get them open. If that,
Well, it does make sense. I asked that question because a number of years ago, on a local road with a local bridge that GDOT played a significant role in, I believe it was us that was largely held the liability when flooding occurred on that bridge. So that's the gist of that question.
Okay.
Anyone else?
To answer your question, the posting is an enforceable action by the Department of Public Safety, Motor Carrier Compliance Division. That is the legal load across the bridge. So if somebody's above weight, then that would be an enforcement action.
Right.
So it is enforceable because that is what's been stated as such. The liability is, we could have liability if we replace the bridge and we're found at fault for some point. But we believe that as a public service to Georgia, it's important for our economy to not just have the locals, governments have to fend for themselves for bridge investments and replacements and providing the capabilities that we have that a lot of the counties may not have. So, and as you saw in the slide of the Georgia, Don, I may put you on the spot, and I don't remember if we're among the best in the nation, like 49th or
we're top 5.
Top 5 of the nation of the lowest structurally deficient bridges or bridges that are in poor condition. So that's very important, again, for the economy and for commerce to flow across all of Georgia's roadways, no matter who owns them, state, city, or county. So that's sort of our approach on that, and that's why we have so many sort of non-state bridges. A lot of states don't make investments on local bridges. They only focus on their bridges. The other thing, just to go back sort of to the local part, Don talked about the bridge inspections. We provide that as a service. The department provides that as a service to every city and county. That is not required by law. That's something we do to make sure that there's consistency and compliance. And the Federal Highway Administration actually holds the state responsible for what is required nationally to have bridge inspections done. And we figure it's best that we administer that from a consistency point of view. We know that it gets done and it doesn't put the state funds or federal funds at risk should a city or a county not be in compliance for doing what there's required nationally. So appreciate Don's team. They do a good job. He had a picture up there that we actually do have bridge inspectors that are divers. And scuba diving sounds like a lot of fun, but if you want to get in a swamp somewhere with these guys and ladies and feel around for what's under the water, you're welcome to do it, but it's not quite like being in the Caribbean, so not quite that luxurious. So thank you, Don. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I will add one thing about
Yes.
the inspections. That's another touch point when we're inspecting these local bridges. Our inspectors do get to know and talk to the locals, and that's another point where they can give us feedback on which bridge they're really looking at for replacement. We take that back and again do our programming likewise. So it's been a great program to help out the locals.
Very good. Well, thank you, Don, for that presentation. It's very good. Thank you, Commissioner, for your input. If nothing else, we stand adjourned.
I think we're ready to get started, correct? So it's 2:31 actually, and I believe Miss Helen Pinkston Pope is ready to go.
All right.
So good afternoon, everyone, again. We're going to start off with the P3 committee. I am Stacy Key, the vice chair. Mr. Abel is obviously not here today. And Ms. Pinkerston's going to share with us an updated joint resolution for GDOT CERTA for the State Route 400 project, correct?
That's right.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the P3 committee. I'm Helen Pinkston Pope from the Office of Legal Services, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today to go over what is the second amended and restated joint resolution for the SR 400 project. The purpose of this very minor amendment is to provide a little bit of flexibility for transit-related funding. The board initially approved the joint undertaking of this project back in December of 2019, and that's when this project was going to be an availability payment DBFM project. and that was back in December of 2019. You may remember that the board just approved the amended and restated joint resolution for this project in April of 2022, and that joint resolution approved and authorized the change in approach to a revenue risk DBFOM, and that joint resolution authorizes the developer to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the project, and to toll and take revenue risk on the project. I want to assure you that this amendment to the joint resolution is very minor, and it restates the previous resolution that was approved in April in its entirety, with just one exception. The previous version of the resolution included $80 million in general obligation bond funds for the bus rapid transit infrastructure. And in the previous version of the resolution, it gave us the ability to make those funds available to the developer. This amendment says that we can make those funds available to the developer and MARTA. So that's the change. CERTA approved the second amended resolution on June 6th. And we are seeking this committee's recommendation for approval by the full board on tomorrow.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion for this to move to the full board? Okay, so moved.
I can make the motion.
Okay. You need a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll go to the full board.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's bring the Committee of the Whole to order, please. Today we've got a safety update and then an introduction of a special guest by Andrew Heath, our Deputy Chief Engineer.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Commissioner. It's good to be with you here this afternoon. I'm especially pleased to welcome Mike Lutzenkirchen, who will be coming up after myself, to give an overview of the partnership between Georgia DOT and the LUTC 43 Foundation. Partnership we're incredibly excited about. And Mike has a wonderful video to share and some great information on what we're doing together to combat serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways. Before we get into that, though, I have a brief presentation for you guys to provide a safety update and briefly talk about the impact of the bipartisan infrastructure law on the safety program as we continue our tour of the BIL and its impact to the state of Georgia. So very quickly, looking at the safety story for the state of Georgia when it comes to serious injuries and roadway fatalities. In short, it's not good. There's a lot of numbers on this slide, but I'd like to draw your attention to the numbers that are highlighted in the red squares. On the top left is the difference in fatalities that occurred in Georgia on our roadways between the years 2020 and 2021. You can see we experienced an 8% increase in fatalities, a raw number of 129 individuals that lost their lives on our roadways, more than the year before. So obviously a bad trajectory that we need to do our utmost to try to combat and bring back down. A little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully, or a ray of light, so to speak, moving from 2021 to 2022, looking at the red box on the top right. We are currently about 5% down in 2022 as compared to 2021. This is data as of last Friday, so this is sort of real-time information. So some good news there, but obviously we are still seeing a very high level, elevated level of fatalities that are occurring on our roadways here in Georgia. Getting down to the, yes, go ahead. All roadways, that's correct. Interstate, state routes, county roads, city streets, correct. And this is a daily report. This is taken from a daily report and provides that level of breakdown across those different roadway types and the different types of crashes that are occurring that lead to fatalities. I do want to draw your attention to the bottom right, some interesting information. Looking at what we're seeing from a roadway departure, lane departure, and seatbelt usage between 2021 and 2022, we've seen some good news there, where we've seen a 17% reduction and 23% reduction, respectively, in roadway departure and lane departure crashes. That has been a focus area for us and trying to combat those types of single vehicle crashes from happening. And you can see some improvements in those numbers. Also, we are experiencing a 10% decrease in terms of fatalities that occur when the individuals that pass away are not wearing the seatbelt, meaning more people were actually wearing their seatbelt. So that's good news to see that trend so far in this calendar year. But obviously, a lot of work still to do as we try to continue to bring these numbers down moving forward. Just normalizing this information, looking at the rates and the trend in rates of fatalities, both on our roadways and for pedestrians in the state. On the left is all fatalities that occur on our roadways. Just want to draw your attention to the right of that graph where you see the sharp uptick between 2020 and 2021. That's as we entered the pandemic, and as we had communicated during that time, fatalities continued to rise even though the overall number of vehicle miles traveled dropped significantly because folks are working from home, things like that. So you see that dramatic uptick in the number, in the rate. So that's obviously very alarming for us. And then from a pedestrian standpoint, just a continued upward trajectory on that. So that needs to be a focus area for the department, a continued focus area to try to bring that curve back down. So just some language around what we're seeing from safety trends in 2022. As I mentioned, a 5% decrease between 2021 to today, which is some good news. Obviously, we have to continue to track that throughout the year to see how we end up. From a pedestrian standpoint, we're seeing kind of level between the two calendar years. We are seeing a dramatic increase in crashes and serious injuries and fatalities at intersections. So think of your T-bone angle type crashes that are resulting in these bad outcomes. So obviously needs to be a focus for us. But again, some good news, roadway departure, lane departure crashes have dramatically dropped. Many of you have probably seen or heard from your constituents about our rumble strip program, where we've been installing edgeline and centerline rumble strips. We believe those numbers are highly attributable. That decrease is attributable to that program. One of the good things about that program is we are continuing to modernize our deployment of that action, where we are now introducing what we call sinusoidal rumble strips, which dramatically decrease the level of noise. And that's a complaint that a lot of us have heard about the installation of that rumble strip. So we're continuing to evolve and innovate, but maintain the safety benefits for that type of application. Again, seatbelt usage, we're seeing trend up, which is great. And we're also seeing a slight decrease in fatalities involving young drivers, which is a continued focus and a major focus area for the department in partnership with the LETC 43 organization, as Mike will talk to here in a few minutes. So getting into the bipartisan infrastructure law, some good news. The BIL is providing a 24% increase in formula funding under the Highway Safety Improvement Program to the state of Georgia. So we can directly use those funds to implementing safety infrastructure projects across the state. In real dollars, that translates from a previous $80 million program to now over $100 million, about $104 million program under the BIL. The new law introduces two new special rules, and you can see those asterisks on those bullets there. One is the vulnerable road user rule, which looks at serious injuries and fatalities associated with, quote, vulnerable road users. Think of bicyclists and pedestrians primarily. That rule looks at how many fatalities are occurring in your state that involve cyclists or pedestrians. And if it's over 15% of the number, the raw number, then you are then subject to the requirements of that special rule. In Georgia, moving into FY23, we are subject to that requirement. So we will be looking to implement vulnerable road user focused projects through the safety program in FY23. Moving down to the older driver and pedestrian special rule, very similar. It looks at fatality data involving both younger and older drivers, that is 15 to 24 or over 65. And if you are overrepresentative in those categories, then the special rule requires you to implement techniques and strategies through the safety program to try to bring those numbers down. Again, the asterisk indicates that we are subject to that special rule looking at our safety history. So we'll be looking to target some improvements targeting those constituents across the state. And finally, a continuation of what's called the high-risk rural road special rule. These are rural minor collector and major collector, so think of your smaller roads in rural settings. If you have a overrepresentative amount of fatalities on those types of facilities, then you have to invest a certain number of dollars targeting those facilities. In FY23, GDOT is not subject to that special rule, so we do not have that requirement under the program. However, we are going to continue to invest with our partners on the local side for their off-system and rural safety needs. And then finally, the bipartisan infrastructure law gave us flexibility for use of HSIP funding towards non-infrastructure activities and behavioral safety projects. And you can see a lot of those listed below, and you've heard Scott Higley and others talk about those. And again, that is what has enabled us to embark on the LUTSI 43 multi-year partnership, which we're extremely excited about. So looking at this data and sort of where we are from a safety story now and trying to calibrate the program moving forward, here you can see our targeted investment areas for safety moving into fiscal year 23. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're subject to the vulnerable roadway user investment special rule, so we'll be investing in those types of projects. Older and younger driver targeted investments. I briefly mentioned the 42% we're currently experiencing of fatalities at intersections, so we're going to continue to target hotspot type treatments at problematic intersections across the state. We will be doing systematic investment by deploying safety equipment to our districts and local governments, so you can see some of those listed there. Continuing our investment in off-system safety. And overall, as a program, we are targeting safety improvements that have a return on investment from a safety perspective of 20-1. That means we're looking for high impact, strong benefit cost projects so that we can significantly impact the number of serious injuries and fatalities that are happening across the state. So just a few pictures just to highlight some of the projects that happened through the HSIP program. Here you can see the State Route 9, Dawson Forest roundabouts in Congressional District 9, recently completed. Great shot there. A different flavor in Congressional District 5. This is the sharp curve from I-75 south to I-85 north. A lot of run off the road type crashes where we introduced slope improvements, overhead signage, pavement markings for that specific project. And then another flavor, this was a systemic project across the state, but this is I-75 at US 41 in Dooley County, where we introduced some wrong way countermeasures. This is a partial cloverleaf intersection where before we were seeing a prevalence of wrong way drivers on the wrong side of the road. Introducing that center median allowed for that separation of drivers to correct some of that behavior. So just a little flavor for you of the types of projects that get implemented through the safety program. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my brief presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time regarding that.
Ms. Lewin?
Andrew, where does enforcement and the local police get into this process?
Yeah, the entire safety program is encompassed in what we call the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which is a partnership between the Georgia Department of Transportation and the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. And there are multiple tenets to that plan, and we call it the 4 E's: engineering, enforcement, and now I'm drawing a blank on the other E's, but enforcement is a tenet, education and emergency response. Thank you, Commissioner. Those are the 4 E's under that plan. So enforcement is a key component of what we're doing. So through the SHSP, we partner with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety and their grant programs. And those are the programs that you often hear, Click It or Ticket, things of that nature, which are grant awards to law enforcement so that they can come to the table as well to try to combat this trend. But it's an all-hands-on-deck approach, and infrastructure is not going to do it alone. We certainly need the enforcement component across the state, particularly as it relates to driver behavior, speeding, things of that nature, because that's what we've seen become prevalent in recent years.
Any other questions?
So, just to follow up,
Okay, go ahead.
we had the fatality in Henry County with the 5 high school students. And it's one of those situations where we know what we can't do, but there's an opportunity for education when things like that happen that I don't think is happening. Because once, the services are held and people stop grieving, the kids go back to doing the very same behavior that they did that led to 5 children being in a car versus 2. So I don't know where the breakdown is still. We're not getting to the schools, we're not getting to the kids.
Well, you just teed up Mike perfectly. And that's a wonderful segue of the exact focus of the GDOT LETC 43 partnership and how we are targeting school-age kids through what we're calling transportation safety summits to get in front of them from multiple aspects. And Mike will get into detail about how that involves law enforcement. And we've got some great information to share with you of how GDOT is specifically looking to target those groups in partnership with other agencies.
I have a question on the bicycle deaths. It looks like the statistics go really high and then really low, but I just wonder, is there a hot spot for those as well?
It's generally in your urban areas where we see the prevalence of pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities, but we do also see that happen in North Georgia in the mountains where we have a large cycling community that are riding on those roads. We see those fatalities occur there as well, but generally it's more in your urban areas like the downtown Atlanta type settings where we're seeing that happen. So we got to focus in working with the city of Atlanta and those folks to provide those accommodations as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, move ahead to your next part.
Well, thank you. And if I may, it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Lutzenkirchen. Mike Lutzenkirchen is the father of the late Philip Lutzenkirchen, former Auburn University student athlete from 2009 to 2012, who tragically lost his life in a single vehicle accident in 2014. Since Philip's passing, Mike has served as the executive director of the LETC 43 Foundation and has made it his mission in life to carry out Philip's legacy. Mike has delivered 420 plus talks called Philip's Legacy, What Legacy Are You Leaving, to over 220,000 people that have heard his message. And the foundation's 43 Key Seconds, which is all on what I just gave you, handed out a few minutes ago, was announced in October 2018. The 43 Key Seconds is a mission to reduce the number of crashes, injuries, and fatalities due to distracted and impaired driving. Mike was born and raised in Wheaton, Illinois, a Chicago area suburb, and now resides in Marietta, Georgia, with his wife of 36 years, Mary. Together, they have 3 daughters, Amy, Ann, and Abby. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Lutzenkirchen.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioner, Board, DOT employees, and guests. It's an honor to be here. It's taken a while to get here, and I'm thrilled to be here. I recently spoke at the Alabama Trucking Association, and they allotted me 5 minutes. My wife said, "What are you going to do in 5 minutes?" And now I've got 20 minutes, so I feel like I've just got so much space here, but I probably should have asked Andrew to click this. Am I going? Perfect. Awesome. So at one point, I'm going to have to tee up AV. We have a video that made this file too large just in the presentation, but Andrew did a good job of teeing up who Philip was. Philip was a Lasser High School student athlete. He went on to Auburn University, was a member of their 2010 national championship team. As a sophomore, he was a starter, became a 2-time captain, and then went on to the St. Louis Rams, where some injuries eliminated his career after about a year. And you can see that he was a passenger in a single vehicle accident that also took the driver in a rural road in LaGrange, Georgia on June 29, 2014. The foundation was started shortly after that, and we have continued to grow. So I'm so excited to be here and honored to be here. Andrew referenced a couple words. He referenced behavioral change. Our national government at the state level, when you talk about road safety, we look at opportunities and campaigns and programs such as Click It or Ticket, You Text, You Pay, Drive Sober, Get Pulled Over. I think they're wonderful programs, but they aren't an image. If you talk to psychologists, we have behavioral change when we view an image. When people see a pink ribbon, they typically think that's breast cancer awareness. Any child or anybody else that sees a golden M know that's McDonald's, and yet we at a national level don't have an image. I'm confident enough to think that the unique number 43 in athletics that wasn't worn by too many people, if we put that on a key, which we've done, you see a video or a picture of that there, you see it on everything that's in front of you on that lanyard. We have a mission that we think on a national basis we can create a national image that will change the behavior of poor decisions or make better and smarter decisions behind the wheel of a vehicle. And I want to use the term for this audience here, we're doing something trailblazing, quite frankly. A private nonprofit coming in here and working with a state agency to do something big, and I'm going to address that as we keep going on. What I wanted to do is really tell you about what we're doing. I should probably go back real quick. I think one of the things that intrigued Andrew when we met was our ability to bring corporate America along for this. There are so many great causes. I believe all profit-based companies want to be philanthropic and give back to the communities they serve with people in that community, but also to charities or causes such as breast cancer awareness, Alzheimer's research, feeding the hungry, and so forth. Wounded Warrior Project. They're all great causes. Every C-suite I sit in, I say, please continue to do that, but we need you to think about another cause. We cannot simply rely on, in the state of Georgia, for example, DOT, our friends at Governor's Office of Highway Safety, public health, to create safe roadways. I think a credible job is being done, but the numbers are going in the wrong direction. I've been a believer over the last 7 years since I've lost my son, and we've built this foundation, that if we could get corporate in America to involve and think that they could help with another cause, continue to invest in the cause they're in, but let's invest in another cause, which is 43 key seconds, I think that's a game changer. So we think what 43 key seconds, the simplicity of that key, the messaging on that lanyard, the countdown, which is a third generation, that card that looks like a credit card, we think if people start to embrace 43 seconds before they start that vehicle, perhaps that one young man that was driving that vehicle or young lady in Henry County would have told all her friends to put their seatbelts on. Would have said, no, I'm not going to be intimidated or peer pressured in this driving at a fast speed. I'm going to get to where I'm going to go safely. If you take 43 key seconds before you start your vehicle, we think we can start to change the behavior and change what's happening on our roadways. So 43 key seconds to me has done something pretty special in the last year. It's an integration that I can now go talk into a corporation and said, I think I've got a risk mitigation opportunity for you. I know I've got an opportunity that can enhance or re-engage, re-energize your current safety program and culture, and specifically behind the safety behind the wheel. Our companies in this country do a great job, in my opinion, of educating the drivers that drive a logoed company vehicle. Where we fall short is giving that same passion to the drivers that drive into an office in an accounting role or an HR role or social media role that aren't driving a logoed vehicle. I know there's a wonderful opportunity for those companies that have invested in safety programs to put it in a format when they go ask their employees who's their number one asset. It's going to be their spouses and driving age children. And there's a wonderful opportunity to take into the communities. So I think we're doing something at the corporate table that they're starting to see the value and how it benefits their business and their employees, and it's also creating another cause. So that's the intersection of what 43 key seconds has become. When we look specifically, you can see some logos down there. Our Let's See 43 Foundation logo and the GDOT logo. Our 43 key seconds logo and the Drive Alert Arrive Alive, the multi-million-dollar investment that the state's made, DOT has made to do a promotion across the state. This is what this is all about. And again, I come back to that word trailblazing. What we're doing here in this state, I'm going to share at the end of this what I hope to be doing in Alabama and South Carolina and other states. So I call this a three-legged stool, this partnership. There's collateral, there's communications, and there's events. The collateral element you have in front of you. Everybody knows what a key is. I had somebody within the last year say, Mike, I think your key is too simplistic. There was a meeting here in Georgia. I left that meeting thinking maybe it is too simplistic. And I believe in a thing called God winks. I immediately got reaffirming to me that I'm doing it right. My 2-year-old granddaughter took it, one of those lanyards swung around her finger, really realized it was a key and took it to the garage door because she knew that would open something. They knew the key would trigger something. So I think that the key is very valuable. Everybody loves lanyards. People are still using lanyards. And that countdown card is something you memorize, and then you remove it, and you place that lanyard key in a visible spot within your vehicle as that behavioral trigger, just like a pink ribbon is, to have you do something smarter behind the wheel. So the collateral pieces, we're distributing these already. We've got over 5,000 distributed in roadway assistance opportunities through the CHAMP and HERO programs here in the state of Georgia. We've already got 50,000 units in production. 10,000 of those are already in possession of GDOT. We're going to continue to hand those out and do an education piece. So what you don't see in that, what you've received, is that comes in a cellophane package. There's a 5x7 duplex card that tells a little bit of the story of what this is and actually shows a picture of the vehicle that my son did not survive in. So that's going to go out. Those are going to licensed drivers when CHAMP and HERO are assisting them on the roadways. That's the collateral piece. You can see a little bit there. There's the 5x7 card. It's duplex. You can see the vehicle that my son did not survive in. You can see our countdown, 43 key second, clear head, clear hands, clear eyes, and then we do tie in the 20-year program of click it or ticket by saying click it. There's a scan there that will take them to the website. We'll occasionally change that so they're getting different pieces of information when they come to our website. So that's the collateral leg of this three-legged stool that we're working with. The other next piece is communications. We've already started that. We're leveraging the DSM boards across the state. You're going to start seeing more and more use of it. We're doing it right now as we head into key holidays. So the next one will be 4th of July. After that, we'll get into when school starts again, the 100 days of summer. And you're going to see messaging like you see, take 43 key seconds before driving to no distractions. You'll start to see our countdown of clear head, clear hands, clear eyes. The other things that you see there, we did a billboard during the Governor's Office of Highway Safety Conference earlier this year that took place down in Savannah, and that greeted people that came into Savannah. And then you see some of the other communication that our team, that I use a third-party resource out of Alabama called 90 Sports Group, is doing a great job of teaming with Scott's team, Scott Higley, to create this content. So that's the communications piece. That'll be ongoing. We're going to supplement it with paid billboards, radio, and TV where it's applicable. I'm proud that we just had an article that we just put in the Atlanta Business Chronicle that was out there on last Friday, June 10th, promoting what we're doing here between our two organizations. Then you get into the Safe Driving Summit. So there's a picture there. So we'd cue that video. I'd like you to enjoy about a 3-minute and 19-second video.
The number of crashes and injuries and fatalities on our roadways on an annual basis are going the wrong direction. They're going upward.
Really, our sole purpose is to reduce that number.
This summit is incredibly important to me because of all the teenagers that I haven't been able to save.
The reason why I believe in this message is because I've seen a lot of things being on the road.
If we don't have to make those phone calls to those family members saying that, hey, that your loved one's not coming home.
It knows no social economic group. I mean, it can happen to anybody.
And it's because of a preventable traffic accident.
It's an awesome feeling to be able to drive, but there is so many dangers.
If these students leave here educated to do the right thing while driving, make sure you're not distracted, make sure you wear your seatbelt, make sure you make good decisions, and make sure that you give yourself enough time to react. If you react, this summit will have done what I would like for it to do.
We have signed a multi-year agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation. I'm on the campus of the University of West Georgia today for our inaugural Teen Safe Driving Summit. When you lose a son, you want to honor him. I'd just be remiss if we didn't look at what we can do so other parents don't end up in my wife Mary's shoes, my shoes. So I'm motivated to get in front of these teens because I want these kids to learn that you can lose your life with a poor series of decisions in a quick time frame.
Distracted driving's accounted for 50% of all fatalities, and that number's just exponentially gotten larger.
16 to 24 is the age bracket that's usually most involved in accidents. They're just not aware of the big picture.
You have a father who loses a son, and he goes and tells that story and turns it into something productive for others. That's part of our mission as a university, right? It's to teach.
We're going to be bringing high schoolers into a 5-hour event that starts with a keynote address that I'll deliver. Then they're going to go to 4 powerful breakouts that'll be led by an insurance company, a healthcare company, a trucking and transportation company, and then multiple levels of law enforcement.
Having a summit in your city is a fantastic way to connect with the adolescent population who's at greatest risk right now.
Working with Let's See 43 through an event like this, a safety summit, is carrying that message directly to high school age students that are becoming first-time drivers, so that we can instill that behavior at the very earliest stage.
The thought of even saving just one life from one of these conversations and these presentations is something that I believe every community should embrace and want to participate in, and it will be something that can impact many lives to come.
I hope that they leave with a message that they can also share with others, but to be not a distracted driver, to focus, to have their minds set on what they're doing, to change the narrative, to be different.
So that was a highlight video of the first inaugural summit that we held March 31st out in the University of West Georgia campus. And I'm really proud of that because that summit was built as we hadn't come to contract yet. So we continue to work with Andrew and his team, Sam Harris, who's the project manager assigned to our relationship, to get that contract built. And we invested to make sure that that summer was going to take place if we had any delays in the contract. And I'm very proud of it. It was in Carrollton, Georgia. It's built a model that's proving to be difficult to repeat as easy, because I had Mayor Betty Cason get on board right away, who I did not know, but she reached out to the 2 superintendents that represent the 6 public high schools in Carroll County. She reached out to Dr. Brendan Kelly at University of West Georgia, and everything came together. In that summit, these kids will hear this 1-hour keynote I call Philip's Legacy. What legacy are you living? Andrew referenced 420 plus deliveries. I change it depending on the audience, whether it's teens, college age, or corporate. I don't hide anything back from what took my son's life. The challenge that I'm giving everybody that I get across is the investment that's being done at a national state level. These programs are built in what I call silos: seatbelt use, distracted driving, impairment, texting, and all that. My son lost his life through a series of being out well after midnight. All 4 of the kids were drunk. They were speeding. Even with 3 or 4 or 5 years of experience, they were 21 years old, 23 years old. I believe that the message has to be comprehensive. It's got to cover all of this. And this is what this summit does. And I'd be remiss if I didn't share with you, this summit came out from a program called Your Keys to Drive. URKEYTDRV, Your Keys to Drive, over in Alabama. It's funded by a grant from a State Farm Public Affairs rep. It's really led by Children's Hospital of Alabama, which goes across the entire state as a healthcare provider. DOT over in Alabama has been involved in public health. DOT is pulling out. Public health is pulling out. That's not my concern. I continue to be the keynote speaker at that event. I just get to show up and speak. Here, our team builds these. And I've been able to take what we've experienced in 5 years over in Alabama, and I believe enhance what we're offering the teens here in our state. Our audience is typically, we tell the high schools, 15-year-old recently permitted drivers and 16-year-old recently licensed drivers. At this summit, we were supposed to have 500 kids. Due to some snafus at the school district, we only had about 250. The challenge in bringing in more than that is we then take them through 4 breakouts that last 30 minutes each, and we don't want to lose the hands-free or hands-on concept with these kids. So we really want no more than 80 in a classroom. So that's about 320 to maybe 350, 400 kids we can bring in it. But I want to share with you one of those summits, or one of those breakouts. It's called To the ER and Beyond. One of the challenges we had, we don't have a statewide healthcare provider, so we brought experts from Wellstar Health System and from Children's Hospital of Atlanta. They brought 9 people to this summit. They built the breakout. The kids came into a U-shaped 3-level auditorium room there at the University of West Georgia basketball arena, and they were greeted with 9 professionals that work in a trauma center, all in different roles. It started out with a video of a airlift unit calling in that were headed to the hospital. It then showed a neurosurgeon from Children's, pediatric surgeon, walk in and say, okay, here's the case that's coming in, here's what we know. Identify yourself by name and what your role is in this. Kids sat there in amazement. There was a step and repeat. So a screen, if you will. It showed what an emergency room or trauma center was before activity took place. Then they wheeled in a 16-year-old female actor who was just a daughter of one of the nurses that did a great job. She was made up, compound fracture and so forth, screaming, breathing. She just nailed it. These kids all of a sudden started to realize this was real. And the most impactful part is that surgeon went and showed about 10 different instruments, medical instruments that are used to attempt to save your life. These kids, I don't think, really got it until she said, this right here is 10 inches long. It has a handle on the end. Because of the nature of the injuries, we cannot sedate this person. We can't give them pain medicine. This is going into your body one way or the other. Kids didn't believe it. So the doctor started to explain to them, how many orifices do you have? This tool, then she showed, is going to separate someone's ribs, and we're going to go in with that. It drew the kids in right away. They wheeled the patient out to go to surgery in this reenactment, and then they flipped the step and repeat around to show what that trauma center looked like post-event, with all the blood on the floor and the gauze and the bandages and so forth. One of the students said, that can't be a real amount of blood. The doctor gave an answer in liters. I said, I'm not smart enough to know what that means. How many gallons was it? The doctor said it's 20 gallons of blood. The student asked a great question. Does anybody in a trauma center suffer from PTSD? This particular surgeon said, I just did a round at Johns Hopkins up in Baltimore, and yes, we just had a lead surgeon up there commit suicide. That's an impactful event. What we learned in this first summit, we're already building an add-on. Now it's To the ER and Beyond. There's going to be a new additional breakout that'll be to recovery and rehabilitation on, and we brought our friends at Shepherd Center together. So we will actually bring in a teen or early 20s survivor and let them see what this person's going through, that they've survived this crash. One more I'll share with you because I think is impactful that we're not doing in Alabama before we did this, and now Alabama's adding it. You see in that picture a 80,000-pound tractor trailer, silver bullet, if you will. That's J&M Tank Lines out of Birmingham. Their CEO and president, Harold Summerford, actually is the current chairman of the American Trucking Association. He's fully on board with us. You'll have J&M at every one of the teen summits we do here in Georgia. In addition, the American Trucking Association brought a brand new tractor and trailer, 80,000-pound unit with a 53-foot trailer on it. What this gave those kids an ability to do is we stepped outside the arena for that breakout. Many of them got to go in the cab and see the perspective of what a driver sees. They got to see the blind spots that none of them really had clues about as to what a driver is dealing with. And they got to see a cone distance from a start and stop standpoint. I had two different kids, two separate breakouts come up to me and said almost the same thing. They said, "Sir, I've never been in a tractor trailer. I didn't get any of that in driver's ed, and I've never even touched a tractor trailer." So I think these are going to make an impact. So if we go to the next slide, you can see we've got more scheduled. In the 2-year contract, we've said we should be doing 24 of these. What I love about Andrew came back to me, I think it was legal, said to him, why would we limit to 24 if these are impactful and we need to do more? So we've identified places around the state. The first one was in Carrollton. These are the 3 locations that we've targeted for the fall. As I mentioned, Carrollton became very easy because I got the mayor involved, who got the university and president involved. I'm pretty aggressive. My theory is we shouldn't be paying for facilities. We're going to go to state campuses. So our next, we're going to Statesboro. I'm still trying to get into Dr. Marrero's office to get this done, because it then goes into motion. Then we get the superintendents who push down to the principals. We will invite schools within a 45-minute drive of Statesboro to that summit. The next one will be in Macon. This is going to be a nice test because I'm testing a private university to see if they'll invest and help us out. And the third one is in Milledgeville. If you are in this room or on the phone and you represent any of those 3 geographies, you can reach me at 770-331-6999. I still need some help opening some doors to get this done. We've got a whole list of areas across the state, from as far north of Rome, all the way across to Commerce, all the way down to Valdosta. I came back from a wedding recently, and my wife thinks I'm a little bit crazy. I stopped in Valdosta because I want to do a unofficial site visit at Valdosta State University. Their gym is perfect for what we need to be doing. So we're hoping to help host these on college campuses where we can. But those are the next 3 locations. We're identifying 4 for the spring of 2023, 4 more for the fall of 2024. And again, I want to come back to this in my closing. I said to Andrew as we prepped for this last week and with Sam Harris, I said the foundation's got big goals. You know, you lose a son, and you got to make something happen for it. This is just not a Georgia deal. There's a lot of people in this room, and I do research, that are Georgia grads. There's a Davidson grad in here, Georgia Southern, Georgia South College. I think there's one person from Auburn that may be in this room, maybe not, on this board. North Georgia. I don't care if you say Roll Tide or War Eagle or Go Dogs, or you root for the Yellow Jackets. There's no discrimination when you have poor decisions behind the wheel of a vehicle. It doesn't matter what your colors are. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what your experiences are. What this state has an opportunity to do through Russell and his team, working with us, is to be a trailblazer. A lot of heavy lifting has been done to get to contract. President Biden helped by putting that bill out there. I'm working on champions already to get to KI and Henry McMaster in the other 2 states. I appreciate, Russell, you reaching out to peers of yours over there in the DOTs. We need help to get this done. There is nothing consistent across our country in the area of what we're trying to do, and we're trying to build that model. So I'm proud to be trailblazing with DOT, and I'm honored to be here to share with you what we're trying to do, and I want to thank you for your passion to help us get to this. With that being said, open to any questions, suggestions, ideas.
Any questions? Comments? I would just say I personally thank you for your mission that you've created out of a sad, horrific situation. But I've got a list here for you, so I'll catch up with you later.
Well, and you're from Blue Ridge, I believe, correct?
I am, and
house at Lake Hartwell, and I did a little side tour there. My wife was with me.
That'll
said
be
nothing.
great.
She said, why are we going to the university, Piedmont?
Yes.
So I need to check out the facility. They have a wonderful gym that we should be doing this in.
There's several, and I know that all these people are thinking the same thing and making the same list that I am. So,
Great.
get ready for your phone to ring. But thank you for being here today. Thank you for what you do. You're changing lives every day.
Thank you for those kind words.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for what you all do. 770-331-6999. It's also Mike@LUTZIE43.org, LUTZIE43.org. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. If that's all, Mr. Heath, thank you so much for your presentation, and at this moment, we are adjourned. Thank you.